Hello, and welcome to Roundtable Mindset, the podcast where we seek to understand and share different perspectives in order to grow and challenge our own. And we encourage you, our guests, to do the same.
Each week, we will pick a topic to discuss, sharing our own unique thoughts and insights. There will be times when we won't agree, and let's be real, that'll probably be most of the time, and that's okay. We feel it's important to understand that we can live in this polarized world and still respect one another and even be friends.
Well, Mahlon, it's finally time.
I cannot believe we made it. This has been one of the longest roads we've traveled in a long time.
Well, and especially just getting to hitting the record button today.
Okay, let's be real. We've hit the record button probably 1,000 times, but this time, today's going to stick. I feel it.
Today's the day. Today's the day for real today. Not to mention all the months of just chatting about it, but my goodness, this has been quite a little journey.
Well, and what I love about it, Jamie, is that we had an idea, a thought, we nurtured it, it turned into a little flame, and now we fanned it to something that we're actually doing, which, for me is, I have a lot of great ideas, and I have executed very little of them. So to me, this is a big deal.
It is kind of a big deal. I think, who knew, I don't know, well over a year ago when I said, God, I'd love to have a podcast, that this would be where we're at today. It's crazy.
Well, and, one of the great things that we get to do, and I'm going to speak for both of us because I know you agree, is that we get to do this together. So, we've been friends for more than half our lives. And so to be able to come on to a platform like this and kind of share this experience has been kind of fun and, a little exciting too.
Yeah. Well, and something you our guests at the round table here don't know is that Mahlon and I are 6-8 hours apart?
5.5.
Oh. We're a 3-day journey apart.
Well, the only
5 hours.
The only reason I'm so specific is because we've driven that drive over the course of 16 years, probably close to 500 times.
Are you serious?
Oh, when we first moved here, almost every week we were coming back because we had to pick up stuff or see family. And over the course of the years, it's gone from almost being a weekly to a couple times a month to monthly. And now with kids and activities and church activities and Kim and I's group friends trying to do, hang out, we probably make the trip now once a quarter. So you figure 16 years, I bet you it's been close. Maybe 500 was a stretch, but it's been at least a couple hundred times, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, that's 5.5 hours. 5 hours, 35 minutes, right?
And 15 seconds.
Doorstep to doorstep. But no, it's really cool that we get to do this, have this little project together.
Yeah, so I think we should take our listeners through the thought process of what the Roundtable Mindset is. Give them a little bit of who we are, but, kind of take them on that journey with us of how we ended up here and what does the Roundtable Mindset mean?
Yeah, that's yes, I agree. I think the word mindset, I don't know about you in your corner of the world professionally and personally, but the word mindset seems to have it seems to be like a buzzword these days. But I thought, I don't know, I think as we were kind of going through the different options, it felt so fitting for what we were hoping for in this project together.
Well, if I can just jump in there for a second, I think the interesting thing for me though, Jamie, was, we were talking in passing. It'd be really cool to have our own podcast. I think we both were thinking that separately, but it wasn't until we had that conversation where I think it was you that finally said, I really would like the podcast. And I'm like, I've been thinking about doing a podcast too. That we started putting our minds together. But it kind of came up pretty quick that we both kind of had a similar idea of, you know, broadening our own perspectives and mindset. So I just wanted to add that in there, that I think you're right. The word mindset has a lot of different terms, and you have your set and I have my set, but the overall theme of our show, which is challenging and expanding our horizons, our mindsets, our perspective, I think was the cement that kind of brought this idea to fruition.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I don't know about you, but it's been 2 or 3 years of personal, like a personal journey for me, and just really learning to understand that the way I see things or the way I perceive things may not be reality. You know what I mean? It may not be the entire truth. My perception is my reality, but someone who experiences the same event in a different way, that's reality to them too. And so, to understand that I can't dismiss that reality, that I can't dismiss that experience, it's something that's grown and changed in me in the last several years. And so I'm kind of excited to share that with you and share that with you, our guests, as well.
No, I absolutely agree with that. In fact, I don't want to say my journey of self-discovery because that sounds so bleh, but my my path on this walk started with a supervisor, and I was just out of college, and it was my first professional job. And I remember I was talking to my supervisor, and she was saying, perception is reality, Mahlon. And I disagreed with her so much, and I argued, and this spanned several one-on-ones because I fought her tooth and nail. And it doesn't go against what you were saying about everybody has their own perspective. That still stands true. But what she was meaning, as I was started to learn, is that the way people perceive you or perceive the situation is their reality. And so, to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, being aware of what that perception is only helps further the conversation, brings collaboration with people, could help settle arguments and disputes. And that was really the cornerstone of my self-discovery around different perspectives and understanding that my view isn't the only view out there. And when I started looking through that kaleidoscope of all the different possibilities and looking at the real perspective that was in front of me and seeing what the reality was through other people's eyes, it really has opened up not only my world professionally, but also personally. So I agree with you. And I think it's a great tool to have, and it's a great muscle to work on, obviously, and also to build up. But it has served me well over the years, and I can't wait to share some of those experiences and some of those challenges with our listeners.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think for me, some of that started with my children who have recently graduated high school. In those early teen years, I think is kind of where it started. Like trying to, oh my God, what is happening? Like it's it took it took a mentor to really stop and say, Jamie, put yourself back in that space. Remember what it was like for you in that space. And to be able to stretch my perspective outside of what I was experiencing as the parent, and to remember what it was like to experience those similar things as a youth, was helpful for me in kind of bridging that gap between them and I, and building that connection even stronger so that we could have those conversations and help each other understand where we were coming from. Made a huge difference. And then when you can take it from something like that and apply it elsewhere, wow, what a difference it can make. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it just opens up your whole world. And some of the frustrations that I was having, I don't know about you, but I would be having relationships, personal relationships where people just wouldn't get it. They were misunderstanding. I was reflecting all of that back on other people. And I tell you, one of the things that has helped me with having this mindset shift is how can I help change that perspective? And sometimes that means I have to look inside my own self to say, is there room for me to challenge what I think reality is? Is there room for me to start seeing situations and conflicts and opportunities through the eyes of other people? And I tell you, when I started doing that, my whole world, it literally just opened up. And you start understanding people a little bit better, and you start getting out of your own way. At least I did with me, because I was looking at the world through, I was the only fish in the pond, and I wasn't realizing that I was in a sea with a bunch of other people, because at that time it didn't matter, because my world was the only one that was, important and impacted. And once I started looking around and recognizing that that's not true, um, it really was kind of shocking.
Yeah. Well, and in our introduction, we talk about the polarized world we live in, right? And I think the need for this type of thought process came into focus over the last couple of years with what we have seen so much. Um, not just like politically or in our country, but even you know in so many areas where it's like this divide between I'm right and you're wrong has gotten bigger and bigger, and I think the skill that I have learned in this process of self-discovery, if we want to be all, kumbaya or something.
Let's hold hands.
Um,
Let's hold hands, Jamie.
but the process has really taught me that it's not about changing your perspective. It's about being open enough to hear your perspective, because then that can stretch my perspective. That can help me understand the world in a way that I may not have understood it before, if I can just take a minute and hear from a different side of the same story. So,
Well, and
go ahead.
no, and I was going to say, I like what you're saying there, because one of the things that I think is lost in society today is the notion that you can have your perspective and I can have mine. So I love that this whole podcast isn't about saying you're right, I'm wrong, you're right, or there's only one way to look at a situation. What I love about the roundtable mindset in this podcast is going to be, let's look at it from different viewpoints, because somewhere in society I feel like the notion of let's get along, how does it go? Let's get along to get along, or I'm losing it, but you know what I'm saying. Um, is lost, because it's like, no, you have to see the world the way I see it. You have to believe the same things I believe. Otherwise, we can't talk, we can't communicate, we can't be cordial, we can't be friends. And I think part of that skill that we've been talking about is leveraging the notion of, let's take a moment, even if you don't agree with the outcome, even if you don't agree with my perspective, but let's just take a moment and hear about it. So I think you're very right. There's something about saying, just be open enough to hear what other people are, seeing, thinking. Um, just even a little bit, because even by doing that, you naturally start shifting and your mindset starts changing, and you start becoming more open to the possibilities of more than just one way to think.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that kind of brings us around then to round table mindset. The idea of a round table being that everyone is at a space that is equal to others. There's no head of the table. There's no one in charge. There's no one um, who's set above another, and that is really, I think that's the spirit of what we're going for, is to say, your perspective or your perception or your experiences may be vastly different than mine, but that doesn't put you in a space that is less than or in or out. You know what I mean? That
Right.
that
It doesn't,
you're welcome at this table.
yeah, it doesn't invalidate another person's perspective just because you think you have the corner on, whatever we're talking about. I love that, and I agree with you. Like, the roundtable part of our platform is all about bringing those different mindsets, those different perspectives, beliefs, uh, experiences, life experiences to the table, not so that we can tell one another that they're not valid or diminish them in any way, but look at it through the eyes of the person that's coming to the table. There is a wealth of knowledge and discovery that we can do with one another if we just open ourselves up to understand that there is more than one way to look at any situation in life. And the roundtable mindset in this podcast is designed to say, let's put that hierarchy down. Let's not just say that there's certain experts that can only talk about, a situation only one way, or get out of our own heads enough to say, this is how I experience the world, so therefore this is how everybody has experienced the world, and open ourselves up to the possibility that there is a different way of looking at things. And I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but I'm really excited about that, Jamie, and I'm really passionate because, as we said earlier, this has helped me in so many different ways and facets of my life, and I'm just really excited to, show people and talk to people about how you can accomplish this.
Mhm. Well, and I do think that so often we come at things with a very black and white mindset, and I think this is just a way to learn to think about things outside the box, or to think about things in a different way and consider that as we are making decisions and learning and growing. But I think one of the things that I'm really hopeful for as we start this together, um, you and I uniquely have our own perspectives, which is kind of interesting. We come from the same tiny town in the same Midwestern state, right? And yet we are so very different. Like I don't know.
You have
It's
such polite words to say. We argue a lot. And that is okay. And Jamie, what's beautiful about our friendship, I think, is because on paper we don't work. On paper, if people would read let me call it our bios, and we would see our religious backgrounds, our political backgrounds, even how we were raised within the same tiny town in the Midwest, you would look on paper and say, there's no way these two work. And yet we've been friends since the third grade. So it's been, I'm trying to do the math, but let's say 30 plus years, 35 plus years. I don't even know where that would be, but we do work because I think a lot of times we understand we don't see the world the same, but we're trying to help each other see it from our own perspective. And I think even when we were kids, we were trying to do that, although we were probably really bad at it because we were kids. And sometimes it was about trying to beat my ideas into your head and you're not getting it. So therefore I'm frustrated. I'm going home. But I think as we've grown and matured, I think we've always tried to do that with one another, is trying to push the other one to see through a different lens.
I almost said yeah, for sure, for sure. Which is part of our journey in this podcasting world here.
Yes, if you would have listened to like draft number 2 of our show, most of what Jamie was saying is yeah, for sure. So if we do,
yes, I agree, but let me tell you why you're wrong.
So again, this has been quite the undertaking for us.
It's way fun.
It has been a lot of fun. But yeah, so I think, we've always tried to do that with one another, but we just haven't been as successful. And I don't want to sit here for myself and think that I've arrived and I am an expert at this. I still want to keep challenging myself and learning, because I don't ever want to stop trying to figure out how to continue to make this perspective better, or challenging myself, because I don't ever want to feel like I've reached the top of the mountain, because then I feel like I'm going to be missing out and I'm going to start shortchanging myself.
Well, and I think one of the pieces of that is really just approaching these subjects that we choose, or the subjects that are suggested by you, our guests and listeners, to be able to approach it with curiosity and in a spirit of learning more. I think that's a big piece of having a proper mindset, is to know that I don't know it all, and I have I always have something I can learn and something I can gain either from someone else's experiences or just from learning more. But I think one of the things that I'm really excited about too is you know, although you surprise me quite often, I'm not going to lie. I always feel like we can go into a conversation. I'm going to have a pretty decent idea of where you're going to land. So I'm excited to bring in some new voices and some new perspectives so that I can stretch and grow that even more.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, and I think that's a very important part that our guests need to understand is that we're not looking for this podcast just to be Jamie and I, although we're going to be the forefront, and probably a lot of the episodes will just have us on it. But we're looking to also bring in special guests or people that maybe have a unique perspective or mindset that they can actually share with Jamie and I and with all of you that would really help us see some of these hot buttons or hot topics through a whole different lens that I'm not even aware exists. I mean, it's one thing to pick and choose the lens I want to look at situations. But when a new lens is brought to me that I've never even experienced or even thought about, that's exciting stuff. And I know that's what we want to do here on this podcast is to bring those different speakers in and provide us all with a lens that maybe we didn't even know existed. And that's exciting stuff.
well, and I think it's important to note that we are seeking out those other perspectives. Part of I think what makes you and I as friends work so well is the fact that we are so different. And so if I need to understand a different perspective, I know that I can say, "Hey, play devil's advocate with me," or
Gladly.
just tell me
Gladly.
or just tell me what you think because it's going to be different than what I think. But so often we surround ourselves with people that agree with us, right? And when we do that, it's easy to get stuck in this idea that there isn't anything beyond this small group of people that agree with us. And so it's always good to hear from someone that might have a different experience than me.
Absolutely.
And
And I mean this as a compliment, Jamie. You are resistance to me, which is good because sometimes, like you said, we like to go the path of least resistance. So we surround ourselves with people that either have the same mindset as us, believe the same things, see the world the same way. And so we flow through life with very little bumps and turns. I mean, yes, we all have issues, but you know what I'm saying. And what I value about your friendship is that you're that rock in the current that makes me stop and reassess. And I hope I'm the same way for you. And I think we all need to have people in our lives that are disrupting that flow enough that it allows us to lift our head up and say, okay, I need to take a moment here and take a breath and maybe see the world differently than I have been. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that our friendship brings, to me at least, is those times when I'm like, I know what I think, I know what I believe. I'm going to plug into Jamie to say, what does she think? And 9 times out of 10, I immediately disagree. But then when we start continuing talking through it, and I can take a step back, again, I may not ultimately agree with your perspective, but it always brings me to a point of something new that I hadn't thought about, and it gives me something to chew on and challenge myself, which is always a great thing to do. I think we all need to learn to continue to challenge our own perspectives and challenge our own mindsets.
Mhm.
So for that, I say
Well,
thank you.
absolutely, and thank you too. It's good to be your friend, Malin. Um, I think the other piece for that for me is that well, maybe not so much for me. Maybe it's for you, our guests, to know is that Malin and I are professional friends. We have a long history of friendship.
Wait a minute, have you been getting paid this whole time? Because I've been doing this stuff for free. Professional friends, love it.
Did you not get the contract? But no, we've been friends so long that sometimes I'm not gonna lie. There are conversations that I walk away from that conversation and I'm just like steaming. But know that 3 days later, when you send me a text with a funny TikTok, or we call each other or whatever, that it's okay. Like, it might get heated, and that's kind of the nature, I think, of our friendship. But at the end of the day, it is part of the process sometimes that we that we go through to get to that space where we can hear each other and learn and grow from that.
Well, and I also think that there are times when, I always say I like to debate, but I don't like to argue. And there's definitely times with us, Jamie, because we are so comfortable with one another that we are fighting and arguing, and we leave the space of debate. And when that happens, I think because we've been friends for so long, we know how to recover from that. But I do stand by the fact of I don't really like to argue, but I love to debate, because I think when you argue, people shut down. Like, you shut down conversations normally when you argue and fight. And now it's not about sharing perspective and opinion. It's about forcing people or wanting people to see it only through your lens. I love debating, though, because debating, you should leave yourself open for the fact of there is possibly another answer. You don't have all of the pieces to the puzzle. So listening is a very crucial skill for debating. And in arguing, nobody cares if the other person's listening, because it's about preaching and yelling that you're right and making the other person believe that you're right. So I want to avoid arguing as much as possible. And I really like to focus on the whole debating and the active listening, and the openness that is to bring to the table all the different possibilities that are out there.
I do think that prepping for this, coming to this space of our first podcast to be released, has been a piece of that prep, has been really learning that about each other too. And how does that further our hope and our goal for this podcast? Or what does it do to that idea that you know we can learn so much more from each other if we can just have a space where it's safe to have an open mind and hear what's being said and hear other experiences. Um, so I think even this process has been good for me, just in even growing our friendship. So I'm kind of excited to see what's around the corner.
Yes, I am. Again, moving forward, it's scary, it's exciting. Um, I know just since we unpacked our equipment at the end of December to now, we have grown leaps and bounds. And so I'm very excited to kind of grow with you, Jamie, on the podcasting space, as well as to the guests that we have coming to the roundtable, that you can continue to grow with us and share your experience. I know we've set up an email address already, so again, would love to hear feedback and future topics from everybody. But really trying to create a community, like you said, this is a safe place where we can bring the different perspectives together and not going to get clobbered over the head. And in the event, Jamie, that we do clobber one another, also show that it's good to come back around, because a friendship is not ever in jeopardy. Sometimes our approach aren't as finesse as they need to be, especially when we each get onto a hot topic. But I think that's also a very important aspect to share with our listeners, because as I mentioned earlier, somewhere along the line, we have to all see the world the same, otherwise we're wrong. And I think seeing a healthy balance of, when you do debate and you do argue and you don't see eye to eye, there's an element there of saying that's still okay. Learn to live with one another, and see that you can still get along and be friends and be cordial, even if you don't agree on every situation. I think is also a skill that we're losing in society, and I really love that aspect of it here in our podcast.
Well, and speaking of community, I love that word, because I would love this to be an open platform where, you know, I, I know what I think. I know what I understand about life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness or whatever. I know what I think, and I know what I believe, and I know what I feel. Um, but again, I'm going to grow from learning about others' thoughts and feelings and beliefs. And so, I'm really hopeful I'm hopeful some of you join us for the long haul and really participate with us in that way so that we can um, not only shift our own perspectives, but share those perspectives with others too. So it's kind of an exciting platform to be able to do that.
It is, and I think another aspect that I would love to do with you, Jamie, and with our guest and this community is I would like to share, opportunities where maybe in the last week we were able to challenge our own mindset or perspectives, or maybe somebody else challenged that, or we even had an opportunity to challenge other people's perspectives and kind of just bring that to the community and talk about them. And I think that's going to be a great way to, through these examples, show them some of the growth, some of the setbacks, because I'm sure there will be some, and some of the unique situations that come up. Because I tell you what, when I first started, opening my eyes to the world, that there was more than just Mahlon's way of thinking, suddenly opportunities were all around the place of showing people how they could, myself mainly, how to think differently and how to accept other people's mindsets and approaches. And when I started doing that, I started understanding that it's not a personal attack against me, or they just don't like me. It's not even personal like that. This is how they've seen the world. Maybe because that's how they were brought up. Maybe that's a religious belief. Maybe that's situational or experienced life events taking place. Who knows? But it really does help me to kind of take that step back and go, wow, that's something that I never would have thought of, but how do I apply that to my life? So during our podcast, I would love us to bring those types of examples and talk about them on here as well.
Yeah, me too. That would be great. Speaking of this idea of sharing something that shifts and bends our thought processes about various perspectives, did you have something this week that impacted you in a way?
Well, gee, shameless plug on my part. I just happen to have something maybe I could throw out there. I think this is important. So my daughter, who is in show choir, so we were at a competition the other week, and I saw somebody in the crowd that I hadn't seen for quite a few years. And my instant reaction to that was, well, let me take a step back. So the last interaction I had with this individual was not pleasant. And some words were exchanged, and I would say shots have been fired, and we kind of left it that way. Fast forward.
So was this like a friend? Like someone you were close to?
I would say it was an acquaintance. Our kids kind of knew each other. We attended the same church, things like that, but nothing like a close friendship. But we had, I would say, a falling out. I think it was mutually understood that we really just didn't like one another. And for whatever reasons, the various life events took place. I hadn't seen this individual for, I'd say 5 to 7 years. And when we were at my daughter's show choir competition, this person was there. And I instantly, in my mind and in my perspective, Jamie, picked up where I left off with this individual, because I was expecting this person to be the exact same person they were 5 to 7 years ago. So my defenses went up. I, in my mind, already knew what I was going to say if this person came over to me, and I literally picked up where I left off 5 to 7 years ago. It wasn't until, and just so everybody's aware, nothing happened. We didn't really even talk. I don't think we even saw each other. I saw them. I don't think they saw me. Everything was avoided. I was a mature adult, and it was focusing on the kids. But later, this morning, in fact, when I woke up, I was starting to think about that situation. And I know you and I were talking, Jamie, a little bit before the podcast started. And it was an opportunity for me to kind of do some of that self-awareness and check my mindset and my perspective. Because where I had them, I picked up right where we left off 5 to 7 years ago. But by doing that, I completely discounted the fact that this person had life experiences. might have matured a little bit. I know I would like to think I've matured a little bit. I'm not the same person I was 5 to 7 years ago. And I wasn't giving them credit for anything that might have helped them grow as a person or change their perspective. And so it was very, narrow-minded of me to just assume right away, oh, we're picking up right where we left off, when so much time's passed and so much opportunity for both of us to grow and mature. So I really had to stop this morning and really start challenging myself and thinking through that. And I wish I could have had that time back, because I think I probably would have approached it a little bit differently than I did. Which,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, which was truly avoidance. And that's really not a good way to work through a situation either. But at the moment, that's where my mind was.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you experience this as much as I do. I'm living in the same town that I graduated high school with, right? So I can't tell you how many times I run into an old classmate that maybe I wasn't super close with, or like really had no positive feelings for. And you just assume, like, okay, I was a jerk to you or you were a jerk to me, so we're just going to live in that space. And then somebody breaks the ice and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I, why did I think that? Like, high school was 20 years ago? Was it 20 years ago?
I think we
No,
just went
25 years ago.
I know it.
But why would we think that nothing has changed? Why on earth would I approach that person thinking that, because I definitely am not the same person I was 25 years ago. It's crazy.
Oh, I'm not even the same person I was a year ago. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and it just dawned on me. I was like, how silly of me to just assume, and there was a little bit of hurt feelings on my end, which doesn't really help the situation. But all of that came flooding back. So, I guess I share this with you and with the guests just to say there's a lot of things weighing in on what perspective you use. And, I'm glad to share this this example with everyone, because I did not treat it the way I should have. I wasn't thinking about broadening. I was reacting to the old feelings that came up. And I think that's something that we should explore on our podcast, is there's other external influences other than just, oh, I'm going to continue to broaden my horizons, because we're fighting against biases. We're fighting against experiences, past hurt feelings. There's just a lot to unpack and things that we have to think through. But I wish I would have had the clear-headedness last night that I did this morning, because I think I might have had an opportunity to break maybe some of those old barriers and drop some of that bad baggage that I obviously am still carrying around, because I instantly went back to that place. So yeah, I think that is a different lens that I hadn't thought about. Is I just expected everybody to be in almost suspended animation, and completely discounted the fact that these individuals, including myself, have grown and changed in the time that we've been apart. And I think that's a very narrow way of thinking.
So you've discovered this thought process, and maybe it's too fresh. But what's interesting to me is how does that shift in perspective? How does that shift your actions? Do you reach out and try to kind of I don't know if make amends, or I don't know if you want to build something with a person that you had that kind of falling out, or however you would describe that with. But what kind of actions do you think that might shift for you?
Yeah, so I think that's another good point. I think just because I'll say I have this epiphany doesn't mean that every past relationship I'm going to want to go and make amends for, right? There's a reason why we don't have people in our lives. So I'm not saying that, but I think what this does do for me is it slows me down from reacting. And so maybe the next time I see this person or even somebody else from my past, I just don't jump to the conclusion that they are the exact same person or even in the same place as they were the last time that I've seen them. And maybe I start giving people credit for growing and maturing and at least give them the opportunity to prove me wrong. Um, Without coming into the situation thinking that there is obviously an opportunity for them to have grown and change, I think is what is going to be where I start applying this new perspective, giving people the benefit of the doubt to think they're not the same person as they were. And I'm hoping that through this, I'm sure there'll be some relationships that don't change, but I'm hoping that there are some relationships that do. And I really want to understand what happened. And, maybe there's an incident that I'm not aware of that colored my experience with them the last time that had nothing to do with me, but I just felt the effects of, and I internalized that against them, and I shouldn't have. Like I have to believe there's things like that happening, and I hope this perspective helps me uncover some of those.
We could do an entire episode of It's Not Really About You. Like, because this is probably one of those tools in that shifting perspective toolbox is like that reaction may have had nothing to do with me. Like, it's not always about me. You know what I mean? It may be something that's happening for them. And yeah, that's a huge, we could do a whole episode on that. On examples in my life personally that this has been the case.
Oh, and
45 minutes easy.
oh my goodness. And, a lot of these things I think about now as an adult, and I'm wondering, how could I have been so naive growing up? Because, we were childhood friends, and there were people, Jamie, and I know you know some of them, I wrote out of my life because they didn't fit the mold. I saw the world very black and white. And if you did not fit the mold that I thought you should be, then I didn't look to see why or challenge my own perspective. I just was like, nope, you don't fit the mold. Goodbye. And I limited a lot of friendships and relationships growing up because of that, the way I was thinking. And I love to also measure personal growth. And I know when I can say go back to high school versus now, we said that was 25 years ago. In that 25 years, it's very easy to see the amount of growth. And I kind of like doing that from time to time, just because I can look back and think, wow, I am nowhere near the same person that I was when I was in high school. And I try to apply that same concept around how much have I grown even in the last year. And I tell you what, there are some years that I start the year almost ending it completely different, or at least new tools in my toolbox, as you said. And there's some years that it's about the same. And even when those years happen, I even want to stop myself and ask, were there opportunities that I missed? Was there something that I could have done differently? Which, again, I don't always get the answers, but at least I'm asking. And I think that's important to get to a place where you're asking to say, is there more that I'm not aware of? And how do I find what those missing lenses are? And how do I plug myself into opportunities to start discovering those?
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. So just to kind of recap, maybe, roundtable mindset. We are planning to put out a weekly podcast on what day was that again, Mahlon?
We will have them on Thursdays. They will be released.
Thursday. Wherever you listen to podcasts, they will be released Thursdays. We have an email, roundtablemindset@gmail.com. So you can get involved in the conversation and join us in that way. We're hoping to do a myriad of topics for discussion. So it could be hot button political things. It could be faith and religion. It could be parenting. All kinds of opportunities to explore and learn different perspectives and experiences. So,
and it could just be something day to day too, right, Jamie? I mean, it can just be any kind of topic that people feel. It could be a run-in with a coworker, or I have this thing going on and I don't understand it, or here's how I overcame a big obstacle, and here's the perspective I used. I mean, I think that's really at the heart of all this, right? Is we want to hear from everybody, and we want to build that community where we are sharing all these things and creating that safe space. So, just to kind of jump in there for a second, I think it's about all of those things and things that we're not even thinking about, and um, just kind of make it that open opportunity just to start connecting. And I think the more we do that as a community, the more we're going to understand of all the areas that we haven't thought about or we're not touching, but we need to. And that's what's exciting, is then there's that growth that we're not even anticipating that's going to happen.
For sure. And I think that we also, if you think about, this isn't just a debate podcast, although that might come up now and then. We might have a good old fashioned Mahlon and Jamie debate fest, because it's fun once in a while. But at the end of the day, our hope really is that we as people can just grow and learn to maybe bridge some of the polarized space that we've encountered here recently in our culture this day and age, which makes me feel a little bit boomer as I say that. So yeah, any final thoughts, Mahlon?
So, to bring this all together, Jamie, I think, we've talked about our platform. We're talking about what we're doing. We're trying to commit to create this community. We're trying to be open about it. So I think the last thing that I just want to make sure we're being clear on is just looking for some engagement. So, use the email that Jamie has given. It's also going to be in our show notes as well. But I think this is the start of, this is our first step trying to build that community. And so if you haven't felt the invite yet, I just want to officially say, you're invited to listen in, and we hope you find it, entertaining, informative, funny at times. I hope it pushes boundaries. I hope it helps you think of things differently. But I just want to have that open invitation to say, it's okay to participate. It's okay to share this. It's okay to invite other people, because that's what we're looking for, is an open way to continue, an open and safe way to continue pushing the boundaries of how we perceive one another and life.
This podcast was recorded and edited by Jamie and Mahlon, with music by Famous Cats. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please email us at roundtablemindset@gmail.com. And never miss a new episode by making sure you like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you enjoyed your time with us today, do us a favor and invite a friend. Thanks for listening. Please join us next time at the round table, and remember, your opinion and perspective matter, and we might not see eye to eye, but that's okay.